what we're doing with SAP actually has its place. And there's a lot of folks out there now that are coming to realize that plant SAP analysis, especially utilized in tandem with tissue analysis, can really drive whole capabilities in the field for growers, crop advisors, farmers, or, botanists, horticulturalists, etc. So the title today is how to get the most out of it, right? And so what we've learned over the years is there's a tremendous amount of use cases for leaf analysis the way that we're doing it, and it's an extremely complex, or can be extremely complex, but it doesn't have to be. And once growers sort of get the hang of it, or a good crop advisor gets the hang of how to utilize it, a whole new world's open up. But a lot of people never even get there, right? A lot of people look at it and say, "Oh my gosh, it's overwhelming. There's too much data. Don't quite know how to read it. Don't really understand new leaf to old leaf translocation. Some of these other things that are pretty powerful concepts when you actually start to unpack them." And so on the surface, a lot of people get there and then they stop, they throw up their hands and say, "All right, well, we're not going to even really dig into this too much. It's, we're stick with what we got. We've got a decent tissue analysis protocol and it's working for us. That's great." But what we've seen is when we start to dig into the liquid fraction of the plant, it's just, there's a lot more going on, and a lot more control can be had, and a lot more in-season participation for the grower to affect change, both positively or negatively, I suppose. But typically we're hoping for positive input on the crop management. So anyway, and then, so, how to get the most out of it. So we're going to go through a bunch of different ways to look at the technology and how to use it. But then also, the most advanced, and I know that's a fairly substantial claim, but at the same time, we haven't seen anybody else out there that's added deluxe analytes like we have. If you guys aren't familiar with our deluxe analytes, I'd take a peek at them online. I talked about it last week at the biocontrol. So we had, I believe, 14 new analyte this past summer of 2022. And in those analytes, there's some really fun and cool diagnostics that can be had on any plant at any given moment. And typically metabolomics and metabolite analysis is really expensive. And so we wanted to bring the cost way the heck down and put the technology, or at least a piece of that technology, in the hands of the grower. There's a lot of, laboratory and academic research into plant metabolites and what they're good for and how they're upregulated, plant moves them around, and so on and so forth. But our deluxe analyte package really just takes a number of really straightforward ones that have direct correlations to biotic or biotic plant stress. And there's going to be some more detail on that. Not today, unfortunately, but later in the series, we'll actually do a full day just on deluxe analytes, really towards the end of the series, 8 or 9 or somewhere in there. But anyway, so yeah, it is a fairly substantial claim, but maybe not the best, because a lot of people don't want advanced, right? They want basic. They want something that works. They want something that really moves the needle. And our analysis does that too. It's just how you learn to use it and how you can learn how to use it. So let's get into it. So here's a list on the right-hand side of some significant things that we've been doing over the last number of years, and how we're actually utilizing the leaf analysis with our local agronomy clients and people outside of our area. And all these topics are very common when we talk to maybe another crop advisor that's utilizing our service, that wants to add value to his growers or something of that nature. But each one of these things they're not just on the surface. You say, "Oh, well, balanced nutrients," right? But there's a lot more to it than just saying balance. That's much easier said than done. And Mother Nature look a little bit silly with how she balances nutrients all the time through soil microbiology and active carbon cycling and soil respiration and so on and so forth. But we'll actually get into a little bit of how to communicate with Mother Nature next week with the 10 principles of nature. So if you haven't been part of one of the presentations that I've done on 10 principles of nature, that's what we're going to be doing next week. And it's a really fun one. It's one of my personal favorites because it's a really great way to actually learn conceptually how you can read any SAP analysis and get significant ability within your own mindset about how nature is working and how you can replicate nature or communicate with nature and interact with nature in order to learn how to communicate with the plants for better development, right? That's ultimately what it boils down to. So But today we're going to go through each one of these bullet points one by one, and we're going to take them a little bit more in detail. And hopefully there can be some insights for the crowd. And then just as always, we'll leave 10, 15 minutes for question and answer when we get to the end. So when we talk about balancing nutrients, right? And for any of you that were at my Acres presentation in Kentucky this past winter, that was entitled The New Paradigm of Crop Nutrition, mineral balancing is one of the new pillars of the new paradigm, right? So mineral balancing is a key component to getting plants to perform according to what your expectations are. But it's always you're striving to obtain this balance, whether we're involved in the process or not. And so when plants are out of balance, or you're seeing visual plant stress or visual plant, undesirable characteristics, chlorotic growth or, poor root growth, things like that, there's a problem, right? Plants are designed to grow, and they're designed to grow relatively rapidly and consistently. When those impediments to their growth happen, a lot of times, for the last number of years, we've all thought, well, all those problems and those limitations to growth are, related to limitations on fertilizer, the law of the minimum, right? But there's a lot of people out there now starting to realize that the law of the minimum is not the only law of the land. There's actually quite a few other laws of the land. And again, that's why this is the new paradigm, because we're able to affect growth without fertilization, or with decrease from, 10 to 80% of the fertilization rate to achieve the same or greater growth. That's typically what we see. So, but again, when the balance is not there, that typically means imbalance is present, right? And so imbalance on the leaf analysis, and, if any of you have looked at our detailed comparison on our websites, our sample reports and so on, we're highlighting the imbalances within the plant. We found that by highlighting the imbalances within the plant and magnifying those, shining a light on those, translating those into percentages of, gradients, percentages of difference between new leaf to old leaf and so on, that those imbalances are showing us where there's stored energy and where there's energy where energy needs to flow. When we want to access stored energy, there's a bunch of different ways to do that. But ultimately, this is what the plant's trying to do all the time, right? So when you really dig into the research of plant stress and plant nutrient stress and associated, academic topics, there's a very key component that plant stress slows photosynthesis straight up.